What's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment. Unbelievable! This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Great day to be alive on Westwood One Sports. It's a Friday, a fabulous Friday with Game 2 of the NBA Finals on tap tonight. A phenomenal Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final last night. Whichever your favorite NFL team is, they're probably in the midst of OTAs and minicamp season right now. There's a lot going on. Baseball fans, as long as you're not a fan of an American League team, or especially the Yankees, you're probably pretty happy this morning. It's a wonderful time to be alive. If you're a fan of the footy, the World Cup is right around the corner. There's a terrible British accent, and I promise not to do it again. That's a lie. I can't promise that. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. It is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM, live inside the Westwood One Sports app, your Odyssey app, AUDACY, live across North America on Sirius XM Channel 375. As mentioned, the NBA Finals pivot to Game 2 tonight. Nick Friedel, our Odyssey NBA insider, will join us on a Friedel Friday. That coming up in the final hour of the show, right around 11:20 Eastern, 8:20 Pacific. The great Eddie Olczyk scheduled to join us just after 10:30 Eastern or so. He's literally in the air right now, traveling for the Stanley Cup Final as it now pivots from Carolina to Vegas after another phenomenal game in that series last night, which we'll get into in just a couple of moments and definitely talk in depth with Eddie Olczyk about later in the show, a little more than 90 minutes from now here on Westwood One Sports. And it's been an interesting week, to say the least, around the NFL. But I think especially in what most rational people would agree is the deepest division in the NFL, the NFC North. You got the Madden cover athlete, you've got a new GM for one team, and a major injury that it kind of flew under the radar for most of us, that this injury was going to have the impact on this coming regular season that it now sounds like it's going to have. All of that and more, we have got you ready for the weekend. In fact, I am now giving you permission that whether you are on your way to work right now, whether you are working from home, and it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're not operating heavy machinery, you don't need to pay attention at work today. It's a beautiful early summer, late spring Friday across most of this beautiful country. So if you have to actually go and punch a clock somewhere, or be in an office or be someplace, okay, I get it. You got to go. Nobody's asking you to pay attention, and unless, like I said, you're working some sort of heavy machinery, and then we don't want somebody to get hurt. Keep us with you all day, right there in an AirPod, on a speaker, whatever it may be. We got you. Not just all day today here on Westwood One Sports, but throughout the weekend and beyond. Everybody else is going to want you to play some goofy yacht rock or whatever if you go to a party or get out with friends on a summer weekend. Explain to them, no. Listen, there are important things going on in the world. I need my fix. I need my Westwood One Sports. As I like to do most days when I either fill in for Nick here on You Better You Bet or co-host BetMGM Game Day on Sundays. I like to start the show with the 5 biggest stories of the day. So let's do that. The high five incoming.
5.
Wemby with the three, nails it. And Mike Brown wants timeout.
Mike Breen on ESPN and ABC the other night during Game 1. Wemby with that fourth quarter 3 pulled the Spurs back within 5 and kind of started their charge to take the lead late before the Knicks charged back and won the game. It was less than 5 minutes to go at that point. Felt like the Spurs were somewhat in control, even though they didn't play their best game, and Victor Wembanyama most certainly did not play his best game. There are times I wonder on the offensive end of the floor if Wemby is allergic to the paint. Game 1 the other night of the NBA Finals was one of those nights. For all the crap that gets said about Karl Anthony Towns on NBA Twitter, Karl Anthony Towns played like a big man in Game 1. Victor Wembanyama did not. Victor Wembanyama played like, he played kind of like a guy who's never been to the NBA Finals before. I don't know if it was that. I don't know if it was something Karl Anthony Towns and the Knicks did that changed the way he wanted to play. It didn't look appreciably different to me. Now, I get it. Towns is a more mobile defender than maybe some of the big men that Wemby has played so far in these playoffs. But it didn't look to me like Victor Wembanyama wanted to battle. It didn't look like he wanted to get down in the paint, get dirty, whether it was against Towns or Mitchell Robinson. Looked to me like Wemby was allergic to the paint. Dare we say Victor Wembanyama looked a little scared? A little soft, even? Is that fair? I think it's more than fair. Look, maybe I've explained this to you guys before when I fill in for Nick here on Westwood One Sports. I am right on that weird break point between Gen X and Millennial. But I just identify so much more with the Gen X ethos. And that means sometimes you embrace violence and anger, okay? And I don't see any of that in Victor Wembanyama right now. Like, I grew up watching the Bad Boy Pistons and the Knicks and Bulls and the late 80s Celtics. You didn't get through a series without somebody fighting. And I don't just mean like elbows up in the paint. I mean like fighting, okay? And I'm not saying we got to have throw down, drag down, knockout brawls during games. That's not what I'm saying. But where was the fire from Wemby in Game 1? Where was the aggression? Just wasn't there. My man, you don't need to spot up from 17 feet every time and hit a jumper. Every once in a while, if you have the ball, you're allowed to do this. You're allowed to do it. Watch the opposing team's point guard. He does it very well. Drive. If you don't have the ball, go to the block. Get the elbows up. Throw your ass out. Do a little battling. Fight for position. Enough about monks and meditation and If Wemby, if he really wants to go full Shaolin mode, Shaolin shadowboxing in the Wu-Tang sword style, then he needs to pull up track 9 on Enter the 36 Chambers. If you are not a mid to late 90s hip-hop fan, I apologize, but go look up METHOD, man. Here I am, the Method Man. Track 9 on Enter the 36 Chambers, Wu-Tang. It's Method Man. But there's a skit at the beginning of that song. It's literally called the Torture Skit. I cannot verbatim explain to you how the skit goes. But it definitely expresses a whole lot of that cold, dark, deep-rooted Gen X violence and anger. I know, he's not Gen X. What is this, Gen Alpha? Is that what Wemby qualifies as? Gen Z? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Just play like you're mad, Victor. Play like you care. Play like this is the NBA Finals. Because if he doesn't ratchet up that aggression tonight in particular, he's going to feel it when he gets to New York on Monday night. He's going to feel it in a big way, either way, walking into the Garden in that situation. But if he doesn't find it tonight, he's never going to find it. At least not this season. And maybe this is that point where it finally, those, well, you have to lose before you can win chickens come home to roost. Wemby has pushed back against that notion all year that the Spurs are ahead of schedule. But maybe that's what we're seeing. Get into this in a little bit more detail in about 15 minutes, but can Wemby find his inner bully? Is it in there? Next.
4.
Kostos Bear. They score! Seth Jarvis quiets the critics and ignites the crowd.
Sean McDonough on ESPN and ABC last night, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. Almost as good. I was going to say just as good. Almost as good as Game 1, but still a legendary start to this series. Where's everybody that said it was going to be boring? It's been anything but. Maybe you were able to get up and take an extra bathroom break or grab a few extra snacks during the first 2 periods last night. But for the most part, this series has been everything you could have wanted as a hockey fan or a sports fan and more. Seth Jarvis with the power play game-winning goal in overtime last night to even up the series. A guy who's been, I wouldn't say totally missing, but definitely has not been himself in this postseason. Regular season, he led Carolina with 32 goals. Not even a handful in this postseason, but a massive one last night after he was separated from that top line centered by Sebastian Aho and put on Jordan Stahl's line. That top line for Carolina has been a question mark in these playoffs because they've been succeeding despite the fact that that top line has not been scoring. Jarvis moves to another line, and in the instance of the overtime game winner, scores on the power play. But this may be exactly what Carolina needed to once again wake up. You know, we talked a lot, both in the NBA playoffs and the Stanley Cup playoffs this spring, about rest versus rust and how nice it's been for some teams to get a nice big fat break in between series. The Knicks, for example, and the Carolina Hurricanes have had that a couple times. I wonder if they didn't come into Game 1 against Vegas with a little bit of rust. Just a little bit. And they were off their game. And now this moment, that overtime game winner, is what awakens Carolina, especially guys like Seth Jarvis, maybe Sebastian Aho as well, who didn't score last night but looked better. I can't wait to talk about what is expected in Game 3 as this series pivots back to Vegas when we get Eddie Olczyk, who's calling the game on radio with John Forsland, the Stanley Cup final. He's going to join us in about an hour and 20 minutes from now here on Westwood One Sports. Counting down the 5 biggest stories of the day right off the top here on You Better You Bet, the high 5. Next.
3.
Judge hits it in the air, deep right field, the laid back, game over! Aaron Judge ends it with a 2-run walk-off homer!
Ryan Rocco on Yes Network. That was, almost 2 weeks ago, Aaron Judge's last home run. It was that walk-off winner against the Rays at Yankee Stadium. And now we find out he's going to be out at least 6 to 8 weeks with a rib issue. Fracture that they thought was just a bruise at first. They call it the first rib. I don't know exactly where that is. I just know it's in a spot that can create a lot of issues, especially when you're a man that likes to mash baseballs into the stratosphere. And without that man doing that, I wouldn't say I'm worried if I'm a Yankees fan, but I'm somewhat cautiously optimistic maybe that the Yankees can continue this charge that they've put on through the last week or two back towards the top of the AL East as the Rays fall off and come back to earth after a ridiculous late April, early May. Yankees are still a half game back of the Rays in the AL East. But it's hard not to look at something that I know a lot of people look at when they look at standings and try to find out, okay, how real are these standings? It's hard not to look at the fact that, A, the Yankees have won more games, and they are plus 93 in run differential, while the Rays are just a plus 5. The Yankees are far and away the class of the American League. But we know, especially those of you in New York, that traditionally there is a period at some point in the summer every year where the Yankees make you hold your breath and swear a lot. And I wonder if this leads to that. Everything was going well. Garrett Cole was back. Things were moving in the right direction. And then this Aaron Judge injury that could have him out until, well, at least beyond the trade deadline and well into mid-August. It's not the season-ending thing that some people had conjured up worries and fears over. He will be back at some point this year. But for the Yankees, it's just the last thing you need when it felt like everything was starting to move in the right direction. Look, in the American League, I'm not saying the Yankees are going to miss the playoffs. I'm not even saying the Yankees won't win the division. Because who else is going to battle them for it aside from the Rays? And are the Rays going to put together any more 3-4 week stretches like they had back in, like I said, mid-May? Maybe, but most likely not. I don't know how sustainable that was. So the division is the Yankees for the taking, even without Aaron Judge. But I'll say this, the margin for error just got a whole lot thinner in the Bronx. Next.
2.
But they'll take it. Look out! Goff is smoke. Guess who? Micah Parsons.
Unbelievable rush by Parsons on Decker. One-on-one at the top. It's just this twitchiness, this little in-and-out head fake.
Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady on Fox last November. Micah Parsons buried Jared Goff, one of the 2.5 sacks he had in that Packers win in Detroit. And the Packers won't have the luxury of that through at least the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Micah Parsons is going to be out until at least early, if not mid-October. And you look at the Packers' schedule, and that's a division game in week 1 at Minnesota. Yeah, it's games against the Jets and the Falcons at Tampa Bay in week 4. Maybe he's back for a massive game week 5 Lambeau against the Bears. If not, maybe he's back for week 6 against the Cowboys. But the longer the Packers have to wait for Micah Parsons to get back, the worse it is for the Packers in an absolutely stacked division. And the NFC North is absolutely stacked. It is the deepest division in football. All 4 teams have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs and in a couple of cases go even deeper. But this is also an interesting division in that not only do you have what you would suspect would be a Detroit Lions bounce-back season, you've also got a new GM and a quarterback battle in Minnesota. You've also got the Madden curse. Caleb Williams and the Bears trying to build off of what they did last year. And now the Micah Parsons injury in Green Bay. A million different storylines in, again, what is the deepest division in the NFL. We are going to unpack all of them with Courtney Cronin of ESPN at the top of the hour here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos on You Better You Bet. Counting down the 5 biggest stories of the day to start the show. Number 1.
Brunson on the drive, spins underneath, puts it up, puts it in. Jalen Brunson does it again.
Mike Breen again on ESPN and ABC from Game 1 of the NBA Finals. That's that little, not a floater, not a jumper. I guess it was a jumper, but that's sort of, he kept the pivot foot down, awkward shot. Jalen Brunson put the Knicks up by 6 with 34 seconds left in Game 1. And that is the most eye-opening thing so far of not just Game 1 of the Finals, but of this entire postseason run for the Knicks. And it doesn't surprise me or shock me even. It's more about just getting confirmation, I think, of what a lot of us thought of Jalen Brunson. He is entering the pantheon of true NBA playoff clutch greats. I get it. He's got to win a title. Before we start to speak his name in the same breath as Bird, Jordan, Kobe, Dirk Nowitzki, Steph Curry. Before we start to speak his name in those terms, he's got to win that ring. There's a chance it happens in the next couple of weeks. But is there anyone currently in the NBA who you would rather have the ball in their hands with your life on the line? Your life is on the line, and all you need is a bucket on the final possession. Who in the NBA are you turning to and handing the ball to them and saying, please, everything is on the line. I need you to come through in the clutch. Is there anyone you'd rather want right now than Jalen Brunson? I don't think there is. The guy's becoming a legend before our eyes. Doesn't even play all that well, although playing through injuries in the bulk of Game 1, and then just shows up in the fourth quarter. That's what legendary clutch players do. Yeah, they can have a huge game as well, show up from the very first tip and play that way for an entire night. Yeah, they can have a Jordan flu game. Yeah, they can go Black Mamba. Yeah, they can be Larry Bird wanting to fight an entire Pistons team and talking trash while doing it. They could be a Dirk Nowitzki fadeaway. They could be Steph Curry from 27 feet. They can be all of that. Jalen Brunson is entering the conversation, is firmly entrenched in the conversation of, is he one of the best clutch players of all time? Get into that in a little bit more detail later in the show as well. But again, NBA Finals. Game 2. Tonight in San Antonio, Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA insider, will join us about 2 hours from now, right around 11:20 Eastern, 8:20 Pacific. We'll talk Stanley Cup Final with Eddie Olczyk. We'll talk NFC North and the NFL at large with Courtney Cronin at the top of the hour. But coming up next, there's one thing that can immediately turn the NBA Finals back in the Spurs' favor. But I don't know if this guy's got it in him or not. I just don't. That's next right here on Westwood One Sports.
It's this is why I'm not worried. It's we're gonna be so much better. I'm gonna be so much better.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
That's Wemby after game 1 of the NBA Finals. Game 2 tonight. That doesn't sound like a guy who's ready to, choke someone or punch someone in the face. Sorry, I know that sounds really violent and aggressive, but I think if you're not, at least in your head, ready, willing, and able to go there in the NBA Finals, what are you doing there? We'll talk about whether Wemby can find his inner bully in game 2 and for the rest of this series in just a second here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. This segment sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting your business vehicles 24/7. See if you can save at progressivecommercial.com. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, I'm really underwhelmed by one NFL move made this week. No, it's not Myles Garrett. No, it's not A.J. Brown. I'll tell you exactly what it is and why I don't think it helps the team that acquired this player get any better at all. That's coming up in 15 minutes. Top of the hour, Courtney Cronin, who covers the Chicago Bears and the NFL for ESPN, to talk about a bunch of NFC North storylines and just major takeaways from OTAs and minicamps as they continue around the league. A little more than an hour from now, just after 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. Eddie Olczyk, of course, NHL on TNT, but he's calling the Stanley Cup Final on Sirius XM NHL Radio with John Forsland. Game 2, another legendary one in what is very quickly shaping up to be a phenomenal series between Carolina and Vegas. And, of course, the Belmont Stakes are tomorrow. So you don't think we're going to... if we're going to talk to Edzo the day before a horse race, you think he's not going to have some takes to fire off on the Belmont? Definitely. That coming up in about an hour here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. But why does... I appreciate a young man maturing in the way Victor Wembanyama has. I don't even like to try and conjure up memories of what I was getting into and what I was doing at Victor Wembanyama's age. I sure as hell was not achieving anything on a level of greatness compared to what he's done to this point. I mean, not even close. I don't even want to repeat some of the memories that immediately come to mind. So credit to Wemby. And there has to be a lot of credit given to the Spurs for getting to this point. I'm not trying to write an epitaph already. I'm not. But if Victor Wembanyama doesn't find some sort of aggression in there before tonight, when is he ever going to find it? And I don't need him to go full 1989 Bill Laimbeer on this thing. But at the very least, I would like just a little bit of anger. Just a snippet of rage for a second. You know, we heard so much leading up to the NBA Finals about all this time Victor Wembanyama spent in the offseason with these Shaolin monks and the physical conditioning and rigor he put his body through, the meditation, all of that. That's great. I'm all for self-improvement. Go for it. And especially, again, at that young an age, to have the self-awareness of, I'm going to go spend, what was it, like a month, I think he spent with a bunch of monks to reframe his mental perspective. Good on him. But it's not doing jack for him right now. I don't think anyway. I want to see a guy who wants to get physical in the paint. I want to see a guy who wants to take a ball 18 feet from the rim and rather than spot up, drive to the hole. I want to see a guy get nasty on the defensive end of the floor. And look, that wasn't really nearly the same level of problem for the Spurs in game one, Wemby on the defensive end of the floor, as the issues on the offensive end of the floor. I need to see this man get angry. Not just because it would validate my own feelings that, hey, we all get angry sometimes. We all lash out. But because it's the damn NBA Finals, Victor. And now you're down one game to none. And if you don't win tonight, you are going to go into Madison Square Garden down 2-0 in front of 20,000 screaming, bloodthirsty New Yorkers. And I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. Who are praying that you can somehow become rattled, that all the lessons you learned from those Shaolin monks, all the meditation doesn't take in the world's most famous arena. The Spurs cannot lose tonight. And at the very least, they can't afford to have Victor Wembanyama go out there and play passively on the offensive end of the floor. If you watch the post game on ESPN after game one, both Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley mention this in different ways. That we've got to see Wemby play with some aggression. And they're not the only ones. I'm not the only one saying it now. A lot of people noted it after game one. Because Karl Anthony Towns made you look like a pussycat. I said pussycat. He did. He made you look timid. Karl Anthony Towns looked like the guy who was interested in driving to the hole. The guy who was interested in playing physically. And look, nobody's going to accuse Karl Anthony Towns of being some generational throwback to the late 80s, early 90s. But that emphasizes my point even more. Maybe it's just a fact. Maybe they've just run out of gas. Maybe that Thunder series just took it all out of them. And look, again, that tired old cliche about, oh, sometimes you got to lose before you can win. It's a cliche because it's in no small part true many times. Maybe this is just the Spurs finally hitting that point. Maybe it's Victor Wembanyama finally hitting that point. Maybe Wemby needs to lose in 5 to the Knicks and get physically punked in doing so to realize that this offseason needs to be spent channeling his inner rage rather than meditating with monks. I don't know. But if I were a Spurs fan, I would be a whole lot more hopeful that he would find it in the next, say, 10 hours or so than to wait for the offseason. Because to this point, and again, I'm going to give Wemby credit. To this point, Victor Wembanyama, at every point along this path, this season and through this postseason, when pressed to respond, has responded. Maybe it's his soft-spoken nature. I don't know. Again, I can't get inside the mind of every fan, but I just know that from my perspective, I see Wemby play the way he did in game one. And I hear that post-game response, which is, oh, I just need to play better. Well, yeah, you need to play better, but you need to play with some emotion, some physicality, not just on defense. When that ball is in your hands, You need to flip the switch into the same kind of mindset that Jalen Brunson finds, which is, okay, I'm going to put this ball in the hole, however I have to do it. And at times, that's going to mean, Victor, that you've got to attack. Go right at it. Go at Karl Anthony Towns. Go at Mitchell Robinson. Go at OG Anunoby. Attack. Because if you continue to sit back and play this passive brand of basketball, you're not going to be long for this series. You may not get back to San Antonio after tonight with another game to play. So that's what I would like to see tonight in Game 2. As a fan of basketball, as a fan of wanting to see this series go 6 or 7 games and become what we really think it can become, I want to see Wemby come out and play mad. All that time with the Shaolin monks, if you're really going to channel your inner Shaolin, then go Wu-Tang style. That's all I'm asking. Kids, for those of you that may be too young to have experienced Enter the 36 Chambers when it was released, do yourself the favor. Again, maybe you're on a train headed to work. Maybe you're in the car. For just like 3 minutes at some point today, look up the song Method Man. It's track 9. You kids don't even know what CDs are, so track 9 means nothing to you. It's track 9 on Enter the 36 Chambers. METHOD, man. Here I am, the Method Man, which is phenomenal that he came up with the idea for spelling out METHOD from a Hall & Oates song that was 15 years earlier. Yes, Method Man was inspired by Hall & Oates. I could go on in that direction, but look it up, kids. You want to get mad? Listen to the torture skit before the intro to Method Man on Enter the 36 Chambers. Victor Wembanyama, that's your Shaolin that you need to find, not this peaceful bit. Coming up next, with the A.J. Brown and Myles Garrett deals now in the rearview mirror, there was one move made this week in the NFL that I think has flown under the radar just a little bit, but I'm totally underwhelmed because I don't think it makes the team that acquired this guy any better at all. That's next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
This is wild. I just went back and looked this up. I'll tell you exactly what the number is and why it's blowing my mind in just a second. Plus, I think there's one team that made a very underwhelming move this week in the NFL. I don't think adding this person really helps them at all. I don't know if it necessarily hurts them, but I don't think it helps them either. We'll get into that in just a second. Courtney Cronin of ESPN at the top of the hour to talk Caleb Williams, Madden cover athlete, new GM in Minnesota, and, of course, the Micah Parsons injury. Eddie Olczyk to talk Stanley Cup final right around 10:35 Eastern, 7:35 Pacific, so less than an hour from now. Nick Friedel later to talk about the NBA Finals, which the Knicks are a 6.5-point dog tonight in San Antonio. There is one game, and we're not counting the season finale against Charlotte because Brunson wasn't in the lineup, Towns wasn't in the lineup. I don't know who else was in the lineup. That game doesn't count. Other than that, there is one game since January when the Knicks have been getting this many points, when they've been this big a dog. It was, I believe, a trip to OKC at the end of March. They were 8-point dogs, and they lost by 11. But with Jalen Brunson in the lineup, the Knicks haven't lost by more than a single point since March. So even if you believe Wemby finds his inner anger and aggression, even if you believe the Spurs win tonight, you can't tell me it's not going to be a game that goes down to the final possession or two. I will be on the Knicks plus the 6.5. BetMGM players, you can receive an NBA Final odds boost token inside the BetMGM app. To use it, add a wager made up of NBA playoff bets to your bet slip and then activate the token. If you win your wager, you receive extra winnings in unrestricted bonus dollars, all inside your BetMGM app. Make it legendary. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. I'll tell you the move that I was very underwhelmed by. No, Myles Garrett, not it. No, A.J. Brown, not it. I don't think you could be underwhelmed by either one of those. Big, massive moves in the NFL. The move that underwhelmed me a ton, CBS adding Russell Wilson. Oh, I'm sorry. I swerved you a little bit there. It's not even an actual football move. They announced yesterday, CBS did, a day after Russell Wilson's retirement became official, that he's going to join the NFL today, the CBS pregame show. As is Kyle Long. Now, Kyle Long, I think, is a quality addition. James Brown, Bill Cowher, Nate Burleson, Kyle Long. You probably could have stopped there. I don't know what Russell Wilson's going to add to this show. I don't. Again, this is a guy who's one of his biggest character traits is considered, quote, toxic positivity. He's so damn nice all the time that you don't get anything out of it almost. And look, this is not to besmirch the character of Russell Wilson. I think overall, Russell Wilson is a very good dude and a pretty phenomenal human being. Is he a little quirky, a little weird? Yeah, probably. Hell, aren't we all? But I just don't think I'm going to be compelled to turn on the NFL today to see what flaming hot take Russell Wilson is going to have about, I don't know, Michael Penix after 2 first-half interceptions. Or, I just don't see him being that guy. I don't. And so I don't think it adds anything to the NFL today. Which, in my opinion, is, if you ask me to rank, and I consider 6 network pregame shows, okay? You've got Football Night in America on NBC, leading into Sunday Night Football. You've got ESPN's Countdown on Sunday and on Monday nights. You've got Fox, obviously. Feels like the old tried and true standby. You've got Thursday Night Football on Prime. I will include that crew. And NFL Network. If you roll all 6 of those up. I don't think CBS is top 4. And it pains me to say that about a fellow Yinzer in Bill Cowher, Coach Carr, because I love that dude. But that pregame show is just, I'm not going out of my way to turn it on. And look, I've grown up in a predominantly CBS AFC market, with the Steelers being my favorite team. So I've watched a whole lot more CBS pregame over the years than Fox pregame. Fox, ESPN, take them or leave them. CBS, meh. NBC, actually, I would put at the very bottom. We'll see if Mike Tomlin helps that at all. But, I don't need Florio firing rumors at me, 45 minutes after the last afternoon game is over. Again, we'll see if Mike Tomlin is an upgrade on Tony Dungy at all. Tony Dungy, another phenomenal human being. My God. But as far as real hard-hitting insider opinion, didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. It's why the Prime Crew would actually be number 2 on my list. Number 1 would be NFL Network. You give me Rich Eisen, Steve Mariucci, Kurt Warner. I love that crew. Love it. They're my number 1 on Sunday mornings or any sort of pregame show. All of this sort of just sweeps under the rug my entire analysis of the NFL pregame show landscape. The fact that the best NFL pre or post game package, if you want to call it that, will always and forever be Chris Berman and Tom Jackson doing the highlights on Sunday nights. Nothing will ever beat that. That music, rumbling, bumbling, stumbling. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. The best. And it's why I think I hold such a grudge and a chip on my shoulder against the NBC crew. Because nothing's ever going to match that. Their highlights are good, solid, but it's never going to be Chris Berman and Tom Jackson. Coming up, speaking of the NFL, we know the Madden NFL cover athlete. We know the new GM in Minnesota, and we know Micah Parsons is going to be out a while. We take a spin around the NFC North, the deepest division in football, with Courtney Cronin of ESPN next here on Westwood One Sports.
time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here? No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Game 2 NBA Finals tonight, San Antonio. Can Wemby find some aggression? Can Jalen Brunson continue to be the most clutch player in the league? Has he really taken over that mantle, and where does he rank amongst the greats? We'll get into that in a little more than 20 minutes. In about 30 minutes or so, Eddie Olczyk joins us to talk Stanley Cup Final, which had another legendary game last night. After it's kind of sleepy for the first couple of periods, woke up in a big way in the third period, and then an overtime winner for Carolina to even the series. All of that on the way. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. It is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. And I noted it's been a big week in the NFL. Obviously, Myles Garrett trade, A.J. Brown trade, and that wasn't the only news we got with everybody in the midst of OTAs and mini camps. We knew we were going to get more. The Vikings hire a new GM. You've got the Bears have someone on the cover of Madden, Caleb Williams. And we got a major injury in what is the deepest division in the NFL as well. Micah Parsons going to be out until October for the Packers. Plus, you never know when the Lions might bounce back in a big way. It's the best division in football. Here to talk about all of it from ESPN. She covers the Bears and the entire league. Courtney Cronin joins us on You Better You Bet. Morning, Courtney. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. We were talking about the quote-unquote Madden curse during the break when you jumped on. It's not the same as it used to be. For a while there, the Madden curse was like, I remember back to the days of like the Mike Vick injury. I mean, we're going way back now. It's not quite the same as it used to be. It was a down year for Saquon Barkley, though, last year after ending up on the cover. What's the feeling amongst Bears fans? Because I know how fatalistic Bears fans can be. Like, it's always waiting for the other shoe to drop in some ways. Are there Bears fans like, oh my God, they put Caleb on the cover, now we're screwed?
No, I feel like it's the opposite, because usually the first time when you hear somebody getting on the cover of Madden, the first thing is always, how are they going to fight the Madden curse? Can they buck the trend? And I think the sentiment in Chicago, more than anything else, is, oh my God, they have a quarterback that's worthy of being on the cover of Madden. Like, that's a huge deal. And for everything that this team went through last year, as exciting as they were, to culminate it with this, like, because this is truly the last thing from last season, because you get the cover based on what you do the previous year. Like, this is their way of justifying everything that they went through as fans in 2025. And I think it's a good way to remember the season, because Caleb was exciting. He is one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the NFL, and that's being honored by an iconic video game, something that everybody knows. It's a one name basis, or you're on first name basis with it. And I think that's awesome. I think it's a great thing. I think that for Caleb to get this honor, I mean, the guy literally said 2 months before he was drafted that he tends to create history and likes to rewrite history. He rewrote the record books last year, and now he became the first Bears player ever on the cover of Madden. And it's awesome. Like, it's a cool thing that I think is not being overshadowed by any sort of ancillary talk of the curse or anything like that.
What is the ceiling for this team this year, the Bears in particular? Because there's a natural feeling, I think, of, okay, we were able to do what we did a year ago. There's got to be growth and progression from that point, right? But like I mentioned, This is the deepest division in football. I would suspect the Lions are going to bounce back. We'll get to the Micah Parsons injury and how it affects the Packers in just a minute or two. But you've also got the Vikings maybe having some competent quarterbacking of their own. We'll see how it turns out with Kyler Murray. But it feels like this is, if you're an up-and-coming team looking to take the next step from, oh my God, we're in the playoffs and we won a game, to we're legit contenders now, it feels like this would be the worst division to have to go through.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's the litmus test that they're going to face this year of just, everybody has them third right now, third place finishers in the NFC North after they won the division. You're never going to get the respect that you feel like you may deserve as a franchise until you can do it repeatedly and you can show that you're not just a one-hit wonder, which, all of those one-score games, as we saw with the Kansas City Chiefs last season going into the 2025 season, that's not sustainable. So there will naturally be some regression for the Bears there. I mean, heck, you could say the same thing about the Denver Broncos and all the one-score games that they won. You don't expect that trend to carry over, but the experience factor of those gut check moment times the Bears have aced. I think that that's the part that shows them, hey, we can do it. We've arrived at this stage. If we start games faster, if we start scoring earlier, if we take advantage of like the 2 minutes before halftime to try to get points on the board before you go into the break, like those are the things where like that changes an identity of a team and it makes a team much more resilient, having gone through what they did last year and still being able to pull out an 11-win season and win their first playoff game in 15 years. So I think the ceiling for this team this year, I mean, you can look at like the over under, how many games, all that. I think the ceiling for this team should be the divisional playoffs again. It's really hard to say that any team's not going to beat the Los Angeles Rams because it feels like they're forming a mega team out there with like everything that they have offensively and defensively. But the Bears are a team right now that still have holes on the roster. I think, though, they're still one of the more talented teams in their own conference, let alone in their own division.
Courtney Cronin of ESPN with us talking Bears and everything NFC North here because there have been a ton of stories this week related to the NFC North. Before I pivot to Green Bay, because we got to talk about the Parsons injury, one last thing on the Bears. DJ Moore leaves, and look, our board op Kenny, full disclosure, is a total Luther Burden stan. Like, I'm pretty sure he's got a poster directly above his bed of Luther Burden that he closes his eyes to at night, which is fine. Like there's a lot to believe in there. Is there a belief amongst the Bears organization that offense can continue to grow with Burden and Odunze and Khalif Raymond brought in as well? Are they deep enough now on the receiving core because that was a strength last year? Or are they one of those teams that kind of casts an eye towards one of those veteran leftover free agent receivers as camp approaches?
No, I mean, it's go time for Rome Odunze. It's year 3, and they used the 9th overall pick on you. Like, you got to become wide receiver 1 this year. And if you don't, then Luther Burden's ready to snatch that role from you because that guy is a playmaker. You saw it in spurts last year. He should have been a first-round pick. The Bears got lucky. He was there at 39, and they now have 2 very, very talented alphas in that room. And I don't think that they would be in the market for a veteran receiver because Colston Loveland is a huge part of the passing game too. So that's where a lot of the targets are going to go. I know some people say, well, where's DJ Moore's targets? How do you divvy them up? I think you have a pretty healthy share among all 3 of those receivers. It's just a matter of who becomes wide receiver 1 in this offense. Rome Odunze has this foot injury that is healed, but it's healed in a way that he called it his new normal, where his foot will never be the same. It's kind of like when you have a significant injury, typically surgery or not, your body part never goes back to being or feeling the way it was before the injury. And that's the case with his foot. I think that it's something he's going to have to learn how to play through at game speed. I know he's been doing a ton of work on it in the off season, and certainly at OTAs, he feels he'll never probably be 100% pain free, but it's not like he's constantly playing in pain. I think what he hopes for, though, is that it doesn't slow him down to the point where it's causing him to drop passes, where it's causing him, it's so painful, it's messing up his concentration the way it was last year, or to the point where it hinders his play. But there's no indication of that. He's healthy now, and I think they have a great opportunity in front of them to see who's going to step up to be the security blanket for Caleb Williams. In different moments, it'll be different people, but ultimately, who is the overarching one in the entire offense? And that's an exciting thing, I think, for an offense to see, knowing that you have a lot of really talented pass catchers and a lot of options.
Up in Green Bay, aside from Jordan Love, the next two biggest names on the roster have both had issues in the last couple of weeks that are going to make us question their availability early in the season this year. We know now Micah Parsons is going to start the year on the PUP list, and they're talking about mid-October maybe for him to be back. We've also got the whole Josh Jacobs thing going on. I saw he was at practice this week, but we have no idea if that may lead to some sort of supplemental discipline from the league later this summer, depending on how it goes. Those are two big shocks to the system, I think, for the Packers. Is there a worry you think that Green Bay takes a step back before they take two more forward?
Yeah, I think their defense, I mean, we all saw what happened after the Parsons injury late in the season last year. That unit wasn't the same. So where do you find that pass rush from? Is there a temporary fix? I don't know. I think that the situation in Green Bay, knowing that two of your very big pieces have giant question marks around them. Like even when Micah Parsons comes back, if it's October, I mean, the Bears face them later on in the year twice, Christmas Day being one of those games. What does that look like? I think he is still going to be one of the most talented pass rushers post-injury, depending upon how he heals from the ACL. But even still, it's concerning if you're Green Bay, knowing what the defense looked like from that point onwards. And now as the Josh Jacobs thing, Jordan Love needs run support. And I think that that's something, if there is any sort of discipline, if he has to miss time, whatever, that you're looking at how this is going to rework the offense. But, they've been paying guys up there. Like I was stunned yesterday when I saw the Christian Watson deal. Like that's a dude who's injured a lot. And they just gave him a bag like that. Like, I think it's a very risky proposition. For him to even stay healthy and have a fully healthy season is always in question. So I know that everybody's looking at Detroit saying that they're going to bounce back this year. They're going to go win the division. They're a damn good team. They just had to figure out the offense once Ben Johnson left. That's understandable. And then it's Green Bay and then Chicago. Maybe we're giving Green Bay too much credit. I mean, we did just see how they lost a playoff game, and the roster really hasn't changed that much from what it looked like in early January to what it's going to look like in the fall. So you don't also have Rashawn Gary anymore. There's a lot of things I think that are concerning more on the defensive side of the ball for Green Bay than on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, new defensive coordinator, people that aren't there. I think that I think if there's any team that's going to regress and people are going to look at the Bears because of the one score wins, I think Green Bay is probably a close second behind them based on what last season looked like and what this roster looks like now.
I think that's a great point too. You bring up about the Christian Watson contract. They've gone a couple of years now without necessarily having a true wide receiver one. It's such a wide receiver by committee approach. I truly wonder what it's going to look like and maybe it's because it's Tucker Kraft. And if he's healthy again, then that kind of changes the calculus in the pass game. But going into another year, hoping that Matthew Golden develops, hoping that Jaden Reed remains consistent. And now you've got Watson being paid like a number one wide receiver somewhat. But not really knowing if he's target-wise the number one guy. Knowing wide receivers and how maybe none of these guys, this doesn't apply to them, but knowing how their egos sometimes can get misaligned when the targets aren't coming their way, and then if offensive success also doesn't follow that, I think you create a lot of question marks and issues.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at their depth chart right now, there's no name on here that should truly scare you if you are a fan of another team in this division or anybody else. I don't see it. I don't see it with this team. I feel like they will take a step back this year. I mean, hell, we know with Matt LaFleur, obviously with the contract situation, coaching for his job, all these things, and then they find out okay, they are going to stay with it. They are going to stay the course. I mean, they're still a wildly successful team since he was brought on. I don't know if they have enough to get themselves over the hump of being in the true upper tier, top 2, top 3 teams in the NFC. I don't see it with this team.
Courtney Cronin of ESPN with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. New GM in place in Minnesota. Sounds like he and KOC, Kevin O'Connell, are going to work pretty closely, Nolan Teasley and he. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
What surprises me is that they're still kind of committed to the idea that this is a quarterback competition between Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy, given what we've seen from McCarthy so far, which is very little. And I get it. Kyler Murray was underwhelming at times in Arizona, but you drop him into an offense with a legit run game and some of the league's best receiving talent, not just Justin Jefferson, but when Jordan Addison is available. You add Jennings to the mix as well. Like, I look at the Vikings as a sleeper team in a division that's probably everybody stacked up within 3 wins of each other. They're one that I could see surprising everybody, and Kyler Murray finally finds some things, and they look up and they're a wild card at 9-8, 10-7.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is where Kevin O'Connell gets to earn his money as the quarterback whisperer, the guy who can redirect somebody's career path. And for Kyler Murray, he needs that right now. I think the rhetoric that you're referring to about how they're like viewing this as a competition, like JJ McCarthy, can he win the job? Like, you have to give a first round pick every last chance to prove that they're worth a first round pick or they're moving on. I mean, this is year 3 for him. This is the most pivotal moment for any quarterback in their 3rd season, let alone one that was drafted in the first half of the draft order 2 years ago, like 3 years ago now. It's a lot of pressure on somebody. I think we ultimately know how this is going to go. I don't know if all of what we saw from JJ McCarthy the last couple of years, I don't know if these are fixable problems. I really don't. I mean, you have Justin Jefferson on your team and you struggle to get him the ball. Like, that's not just like that's not a scheme issue. That's a fundamental quarterback problem. When you have the best receiver in the game struggling to connect with you. So I think for Kyler Murray can make that offense really explosive. And I'm excited to see how they utilize him and what the greatness that we saw from Kyler in moments during the time he was in Arizona. Can you sustain that over 17 games? We have never once seen a full, complete, great season from Kyler Murray. And now being in an offense where you've got an offensive line that's had some, health issues in the years past. You would like to think with Christian Darrisaw being healthy now, Brian O'Neill being healthy, some of the interior issues that they had, that protection won't be an issue. He's obviously a smaller quarterback. You have to account for that. But they've got so many pieces around him. And that's a team that can be carried by its defense, knowing that it might take the quarterback, whoever it is, assuming it's Kyler Murray, might take him a little bit of time to get figured out. So I think that Minnesota's in a great spot to make some noise as a team that, you might be writing them off right now because because what you've seen everybody else do in this division and how, other teams. I mean, hell, the Bears were in that spot last year. Nobody gave the Bears any credit, thinking, it's first year, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, we'll see where it goes. Oh, they start out 0-2 and they're getting their ass kicked in Detroit, like in historic fashion. And it's like, oh, wait, they turned it on. Like, they figured things out along the way. Maybe they can be this year's version of the Chicago Bears.
It's going to be a fascinating division to watch as OTAs and mini camps wrap up around the league, about a month and a half off, and then right back into it for training camp. Courtney, thanks so much for the time. Enjoy the rest of the summer. We'll catch up soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Courtney Coronan covers the Chicago Bears and the NFL for ESPN, does an excellent job. Appreciate her insight, not just on Chicago, on Green Bay, on Minnesota, the entire NFC North. Great stuff. And I do think the Vikings are that sleeper team in that division. And a good point by Courtney. Like, are we discounting just how many question marks there are around the Green Bay Packers? And are they the team that sort of regresses to the mean, for lack of a better way to put it, especially with big question marks around Josh Jacobs, and you've got Micah Parsons out until October as well. We'll get back into the NBA Finals shortly with Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA insider, talking about Game 2 in San Antonio tonight. He joins us in about an hour. Eddie Olczyk going to join us as well. Of course, NHL on TNT. He'll be up in about 15 minutes. We'll talk to him about the Stanley Cup Final, which the first 2 games have been impeccable to this point. But coming up next, we have to ask if one man has already catapulted himself into the pantheon of all-time great clutch players. Does he have to win a title before we can say that? That's next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Underneath, puts it up, puts it in. Jalen Brunson does it again.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
He's the king of clutch. I don't know how else to put it. That man could be injured, could not show up for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden the game's on the line, and what's he do? He shows up. Jalen Brunson. Mike Breen on the call on ESPN and ABC in Game 1 when Brunson dropped 30, most of them in the fourth quarter, but most of them in absolutely huge moments down the stretch. Is he the NBA's king of clutch right now? And where does he rank amongst the all-time greats? Might have to be something we throw open to the group and talk about for just a minute or two. Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA Insider, going to join us 1 hour from now to talk about Spurs Knicks Game 2 in San Antonio tonight. Eddie Olczyk, who's calling the Stanley Cup Final alongside John Forsland on Sirius XM NHL Radio, is literally in transit to Vegas for Game 3 this weekend after Carolina evened the series up last night. We'll talk to him in about 10 minutes as well. But I don't know. Does he need to win a title before we're willing to bestow this level of, acclaim on Jalen Brunson? Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on Westwood One Sports. It's You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. This segment sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting your business vehicles 24/7. See if you can save at progressivecommercial.com. I don't know if it's the need that some of us who are not necessarily New York sports fans, the need we have to kind of keep star athletes from New York at arm's length. And what I mean by that is star athletes who play in New York or LA, or really, I would limit it to those two, especially New York and LA. Those star athletes are always, it feels like to those of us who aren't fans in New York or LA, it's going to feel like to us like they always get an outsized level of attention because they're in New York or LA. And so I think there is a desire by a lot of us to, like I said, keep Jalen Brunson at arm's length as far as how much we're willing to embrace this clutch ability that he has as one of the great clutch stars of all time. Because he's in New York. Whatever he does, New York fans are going to drool all over it anyway. But then I do think there is a legitimate qualification that needs to be added to the list, and that is a title. Our video producer today, Dan, said 100% needs a title. Kenny, our board op, making goo-goo eyes at his Luther Burden poster as he falls asleep every night, says the only guards he'd take at the end of a game over Jalen Brunson, Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. Yeah, I didn't mention Luka earlier. That was an omission by me. Larry Bird's got to be on that list. I mean, Bill just mentioned in the chat, too, if we're going to use a time machine, Jerry West, the logo. Those are all worth mentioning, and they're all, if you witnessed them in their prime doing those things, like the pinnacle of clutch. The Mount Rushmore of clutch. But I really think if Jalen Brunson wins a title in the next 2 weeks, especially if he has another one of those moments like he did in the fourth quarter in Game 1, he's going to have to go on that list. And we'll probably need to see it some more for him to really cement his place amongst that list. But he'd belong there. He would belong there, no doubt. And yeah, I realize when I open it up to Larry Bird, I mentioned Dirk Nowitzki earlier. You're opening it up beyond just guards. Big Shot Bob, Robert Horry, back in the day. There's no more classic example of, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the rest of Robert Horry's NBA career, but there is no more classic example of being known for like a handful of moments and nobody really caring to remember the rest of your career. Sorry, that sounds harsh, but it's true. Like, Robert Horry is remembered for those big game-winning playoff shots. And like the rest of his career just is kind of like you mean he played in something other than those playoff games? Dan, being a Philadelphia fan, obviously had to throw AI into the chat. Allen Iverson, rings. We talking rings, Dan. Not a conference finals. We're talking rings. Without it, I can't put AI up there. We can mention the clutch gene that Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, they had. But right now, let's pivot away just for like the next 30 seconds from the all-time list. Right now, nobody else in the league other than maybe Luka. Nobody else in the league I would want with the ball in their hands with the game on the line than Jalen Brunson. See if he has another one in him tonight or at some point in these NBA Finals. Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA Insider, is going to join us in about 45 minutes to talk about Game 2 in San Antonio tonight. Can Wemby find his inner rage? Can he find some aggression in Game 2? But coming up next, man, if you are one of those people who thought the Stanley Cup Final Series was going to be boring, I'm looking at you like the Travolta meme right now. Hands up, arms outstretched. Where are you? Because this has been a fantastic Stanley Cup final so far. We talked to Eddie Olczyk about it next, right here on Westwood One Sports.
pair. They score! Seth Jarvis quiets the critics and ignites the crowd.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
The call on ABC and ESPN last night of the OT game winner for the Carolina Hurricanes, the Stanley Cup final, now even up at a game apiece. Who holds the advantage as they head to Vegas for Game 3? We'll ask a guy who should know because he's calling it on the radio side alongside John Forsland on Sirius XM NHL Radio, and he's literally headed to Vegas right now as well. The great Eddie Olczyk joins us here on Westwood One Sports. Edzo, I appreciate you making the time, especially because we're keeping you from getting on a flight. How are you, my friend?
Pouring rain here in Houston, Texas, and just getting a little quick change of planes and get to Vegas and look forward to an unbelievable day tomorrow. We have the ultimate daily double, the Pucks and Ponies. We got they're running the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga at about 7:07 Eastern, and then an hour later it'll be puck chop for a huge Game 3 between the Golden Knights and Hurricanes. So it's my kind of weekend, and it's always great to catch up with you, and I hope you and your family are doing well.
We're doing great, man. I always love hearing your voice. Well, you know what? I'm going to ask you about the Belmont real quick. Give me a quick take on the Belmont. Okay. Renegade's not having to work off the rail like he did at the Derby. Golden Tempo back after taking the Preakness off. What do you think?
Yeah, if Renegade did not draw the rail in the Derby, Chris, I would have taken Renegade. I just think he's the best. He's the best equine athlete in the race. I think the race sets up for him. I think there's a little bit more pace in this race than maybe people are talking about or maybe appears on paper. So I think the quicker they go, the better it will be. I think he gets the jump on Golden Tempo. He doesn't have to worry about the rail, as you mentioned. So I'm going to take a shot with number 4 Renegade, and I'm also going to use a number 3 Chief Wallaby underneath, who I think is going to sit a really good trip as well. I think he'll be forward. He should be able to kick on, so I'm going to look for a little 4-3, and I'm also going to use the 8 emerging market. So 4-3-8 in the running the Belmont Stakes tomorrow for yours truly.
Love it. Eddie Olczyk with us here. You know he loves horses. He loves hockey, too. Man played in the league for a decade and a half. He's a Stanley Cup champion with that Rangers team in 1994. On the call, the Stanley Cup final on Sirius XM NHL Radio. Is this the best first 2 games of a Stanley Cup final that you can remember, Eddie? Because both teams battling back from multi-goal deficits the way they have. I can't believe people thought this was going to be a boring series coming into it with these 2 forechecks.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard, Carolina in 5, all those type of things. And look, their resume speaks for itself, what they did in the playoffs. I mean, sweep, and then win in 5. Vegas is a very good team. They can defend. They're proven. They've won. So to me, there is something for that. And I think for Carolina, it's proven to be their greatest challenge in these playoffs so far. All due respect to Ottawa and Philadelphia and Montreal, but this is the ultimate test, and this is where you want in the Stanley Cup final. So, I mean, it's been just flat out awesome the first couple of games. It looked like Vegas had them over a barrel last night. 50 minutes of that game, the first 50 minutes of that game, Chris, Vegas played the absolute perfect hockey game against Carolina. They gave them nothing. It was clinical. I think it was surgical was one of the words I used last night on our broadcast. And all of a sudden, they win a face-off. They got the puck behind their own net, that being the Vegas Golden Knights. And Rasmus Anderson, for some reason, instead of just advancing the puck on his forehand in behind Carter Hart's right shoulder, he decides he wants to stop and reverse the play right into Logan Stankoven. And Stankoven picks his pocket, grabs the puck, throws it to the front of the net. It bounces in off of a Vegas defender. And all of a sudden, now the crowd's into it. They've got juice, and it's a 2-1 game. And Vegas wasn't able to recover. I know they scored late to tie it and get it into overtime, but Chris, when you play that well for that long and you don't give the other team anything, and then you give them a gift and they take advantage. Look, that's what Vegas did to Carolina in Game 1. They pressed up on them, and Vegas gave them a couple of great opportunities, and Carolina cashed in, and then Vegas found their game and eventually, found a way to win the game. So I always felt that this thing, if it went anything less than 6, I would be shocked. And certainly looks like now we're on a collision course to at least go 6 and maybe even 7, but a couple of huge games coming up in Vegas, one on Saturday, and then something to keep an eye on. They do have 2 days off in between games 3 and 4. So if you're the coaches, tough travel day today, but play tomorrow, you can empty the tank because you got that extra day in between to rejuvenate and hydrate and do all those good things and get ready for a huge game 4. But game 3, most importantly, but this thing, it's been epic. It really has, and it's great for business. It's great for the greatest game in the world, and certainly great to be a part of it on the radio side in the final.
Before I let you run, Eddie, because I know you got to catch this flight, I got to ask, Tort's challenge of the Barbashev goal, or the non-goal, would you have done that knowing that Carolina's power play has struggled so mightily and said, hey, I'll roll the dice here. If we get the goal on replay, great. We've got the lead with a couple minutes left. If not, we've been stopping their power play so far.
Yeah, I'm going to answer it this way. I saw what Vegas saw. That's what I saw on the replays that I was watching and again, doing the color on radio. I saw what they saw. But, and again, with a few commas, you have to understand the situation. You have to understand the score, the circumstances, most importantly. That's where you weigh. Do you go ahead and try to challenge that? I didn't mind the challenge at all. I did not. But, you have these situations where, okay, do we want to run? Are we 120% sure that this is going to be a goal? And I think that's how you have to weigh it. And I give Torts credit. He said after I would challenge this 10 out of 10 again. And it happened in round 3 in the Eastern Conference final with Montreal, the first goal of the game that Stankoven scored against Montreal to give them a 1-0 lead. I thought it was goaltender interference. He went in there. The goaltender was not able to play his position. I thought it was a good challenge for Montreal, and the goal ended up standing, and Montreal ended up being shorthanded. And Martin St. Louis, the head coach of the Canadiens, Chris, said the same thing. I thought that was 100% goaltender interference. So in saying that, I think it's always easy after the fact, but I think the circumstance of that situation, of that challenge, that late in the game, in a 2-2 game like that, I think there is some debate, but I saw what they saw. So in the moment, for sure, I probably would have done the same thing that John Tortorella did.
Edzo, really appreciate you taking the time in between flights to hop on for just a couple of minutes. Looking forward to the rest of the Stanley Cup final and, of course, the Belmont tomorrow, my friend. We'll catch up again soon. Be well.
Appreciate it, Chris. You too, man.
Yep, Eddie Olczyk, NHL on TNT, and he's on the call of the Stanley Cup final with his Seattle Kraken teammate John Forsland on Sirius XM NHL Radio. You know he loves the ponies, too. Belmont Stakes post time, 7:04 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. You heard him mention Logan Stankoven there a couple of times. Stankoven has been huge. He's going to be a Conn Smythe nominee. He's going to be up there on the list, if not the guy to win it, if the Hurricanes win the Stanley Cup. He's been one of those depth pieces for Carolina that's been so important without the top line producing. Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, they've been struggling, Svechnikov, and they were finally able to get some production out of one of those guys on the top line last night, moving Seth Jarvis down to play with Jordan Staal just a little bit, and then he gets the game-winning goal in overtime after Staal draws a penalty on the power play. Jarvis gets it. That could be, bang, the awakening that Seth Jarvis, maybe Sebastian Aho, if you put Jarvis right back up there with him on the top line again to start game 3 tomorrow night, that top line for Carolina needs. And if all of a sudden their top line starts producing offense as well, I think that overtime goal ends up being the pivot point in this series. I don't think it's a 5-game series. It's still at least 6, but it's a pivot point, definitely. Also interesting to see what kind of a loss Braden McNabb could be for Vegas on the blue line after getting hit in the face with a slap shot. There's a lot going on in this series, and it's going to be a really, really good one for the remainder of it. It's been excellent through the first 2 games. We really appreciate Eddie Olczyk taking time. Mark Stone, who had the game-tying goal that sent it to overtime for Vegas last night, was one of the names I was ready to bring up Because last night I'm sitting there thinking about what we're going to talk about this morning here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. And I was going to bring up the clutch gene in general across all sports because Mark Stone, who's won a cup with Vegas, is a great example of a guy who is a clutch player. He knew exactly where to go last night at exactly the right time. Puck gets knocked loose, and he bangs it past Freddie Anderson for the game-time goal. Mark Stone is clutch in the NHL because he's been there. He's been through the battles. He's won the wars. He's carried the cup. In the NBA, as we just got done talking about a couple minutes ago, I want to circle back to this. In the NBA, I think you have to have that title to be considered one of the all-time great clutch players. Game 2 tonight, BetMGM players, you'll receive an NBA Final odds boost token inside your BetMGM app right now. To use the token, add a wager made up of NBA playoff bets to your bet slip. Activate the token. If you win that wager, you receive extra winnings and unrestricted bonus dollars. I've told you already. I'll repeat it again before the end of the show. And now, Knicks plus 6.5. They've only been that big a dog once since January. And it was a game on the road against OKC. In February, I believe it was. We're not counting the regular season finale against Charlotte. Nobody was in the lineup that night. But Jalen Brunson has that clutch gene. He has it in there. I'm just not, until he wins a title, this isn't quite an apples-to-apples comparison. We were doing a lot of arguing during the break. Myself, Bill, Tyler, Kenny, Dan, about which players belong in this pantheon of great clutch players. And Damian Lillard's name came up. I think Bill threw it out there. And immediately he got pushback because the easy retort is, the hell Dame ever win? Yeah, it's a great question. He had some phenomenal clutch moments, but what did Dame ever win in Portland? And that's the difference. It's the same thing when you think of Allen Iverson. Dan mentioned him earlier, too. Allen Iverson had a penchant for coming up with massive shots in big moments, but no ring. You've got to have at least one ring, I think, to be included on this list of the all-time great clutch players. And Jalen Brunson is just 3 wins away, I think, from cementing his spot, cementing that legacy as a guy who, when the game is on the line, the season is on the line, everything is on the line, I want the ball in his hands. Like, there is no more exemplary moment than that shot he took. We played the clip from it earlier. 34 seconds left. You're under 40 seconds. Brunson gets the ball, starts to drive, realizes he's not going to be able to get to the hoop, so he stops up just inside the right elbow, somehow keeps his pivot foot, and throws it up. And at that point in time, given the game Brunson had to that point, despite making a couple of big buckets already in the fourth quarter, I'm thinking, ooh, it's an off night for Brunson. That's some sort of weird pull up, half fade away, floater, wing and a prayer jump shot. I think it exited the frame for a second. That's how much air he got on it. And it comes back down and just bloop, teardrops right into the hoop. And that's that moment where that's one of the clips, depending upon what happens in the rest of this series. I'm not trying to write off the Spurs. I promise I'm not. Wemby could find his inner monster tonight and could hold on to that for the rest of the series, and who knows what happens. But if the Knicks go on to win this series and win the championship, and there isn't another sort of signature moment in this series, even if there is, that could be the one that's going to get replayed over and over again. It's not as pretty as the Jordan push-off in Utah. Yeah, I called it a push-off. We can call it a push-off and still appreciate its greatness. It's not as pretty as that, but it's one of those moments where you're going to go, okay, that's where Jalen Brunson cemented his legacy as one of the all-time great clutch players. Got to win the ring, though. I'm tapping the wrong hand. Those of you watching on YouTube, it's this hand. I don't know. Where do you wear your NBA title ring? Not a problem I've ever had to worry about or will ever have to worry about. We'll talk to Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA insider, about Game 2 coming up in about 25 minutes. But next, training camp is right around the corner. OTAs and mini camps wrapping up. There's still some moves that need to be made. We'll throw them out there for you next here on Westwood One Sports.
Hey, Crazy, you can throw to it the sounder for GTFO. I'll drop it, and then I'll play some NFL music.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
All Friday here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Yeah, I said football. OTAs and mini camps ongoing around most of the 32 NFL cities. People dreaming about what could happen when training camps get started in a little more than 6 weeks across most of the NFL. We will each pick a move that we would like to see happen before training camp in just a moment here on Westwood One Sports. Because, look, not everything can be Myles Garrett to the Rams. Not everything can be A.J. Brown to the Patriots. And there are still guys sitting out there, whether they are veteran free agents, scrap heap guys. I would think we're going to do better than scrap heap guys. Maybe guys who might be on the trade block, given some of the moves that have been made recently. We'll throw them out there in just a second in a game of GTFO or Oh Yeah. And Nick Friedel will join us in 20 minutes to talk about Game 2 of the NBA Finals. All on the way here inside the final hour of the show, the Power Hour on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Don't forget, you can always take Westwood One Sports with you inside that Westwood One Sports app. So not just everything here on Westwood One Sports, but all the live game action you could need as well inside that Westwood One Sports app. And of course, we're inside the Odyssey app as well, AUDACY, live across North America on SiriusXM channel 375. GTFO or Oh Yeah, I will explain the rules before we hit the very important sounder. It's very simple. We're each going to throw out a move that we'd like to see in the NFL leftovers edition, I guess we could call it, of GTFO or Oh Yeah. And everyone else will then tell that person to either GTFO with that idea or, oh yeah, I like that. Could be a Kool-Aid Man, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Could be a Randy Macho Man Savage. Oh yeah. Or, as our esteemed executive producer Bill Zimmerman came up with a few weeks ago, it could be the Stone Cold Steve Austin, oh, hell yeah. That's if you absolutely love the idea. So, with no further ado, the NFL Leftovers edition of GTFO or Oh Yeah.
Or Oh Yeah.
All right, we got the rules out of the way, so let's jump right in. OTAs and mini camps wrapping up over the next week or two around most of the NFL. Training camps about 6 weeks away. What is a move you would like to see happen? A player you would like to see go to what team? And then we'll either shoot it down or praise it wildly. Bill, I want you to get us started. You're good at cooking up ideas like this. What do you have for us for today's GTFO or Oh Yeah, NFL Summer Break Edition?
All right, Nick, I'm going to start with the Chicago Bears because I don't know if you've ever, been in a city, especially some place like Manhattan on a hot summer day and it's trash day and there's an odor. There's a foul odor that just emits from anywhere you go in the city. Well, if you're in the city of Chicago, it's not trash day. It's the Chicago Bears defensive line. They've got a really good offense. They've got a pretty good secondary. They got a couple good linebackers. That defensive line might be the worst unit in the NFL. They have Montez Sweat and a bunch of guys that just can't play anymore or could never play in the first place. They need to go out and they need to get help on that defensive line. So they need to go to Cam Jordan, who knows Dennis Allen. And I know Mickey Loomis said he's got a contract on the table. Figure out what that contract is. Go beat that. They can move some money around. They absolutely have money to do this. Go get Cam Jordan, beef up that defensive line, help out Montez Sweat, elevate that defense. And if Cam Jordan can play like he did last year, this Chicago Bears defense could be functional enough to make them a true Super Bowl contender.
I'm going to give that a mild oh yeah, because I don't know how much gas is left in the tank there. But if you're trying to squeeze blood from a stone, or just a final few drops out of Cam Jordan. I don't hate that. And I think when you talk about the weakness that is the Bears' defensive front, it's not a terrible call. I'll give it the mild, oh yeah. I'm not going to go full-blown stone cold, oh hell yeah. Kenny, what do you think of this idea? Cam Jordan to your Chicago Bears.
I'm going to give it an oh yeah. The Bears need it at this point. I wish they would have done a better job in free agency and the draft at addressing this issue, but Bill's totally spot on. It might be one of the worst units in the league, and if Cam Jordan still has anything left, the Bears will definitely take it at this point. So, oh yeah, for Cam Jordan to the Bears.
All right, a couple of oh yes. Kenny, I'll let you go next. What do you have for GTFO or oh yeah, NFL Summer Break Edition?
So Nick's been talking about this on the show for the last week or so, that the Commanders need some help on offense. And it was rumored for a while that Brandon Ayuk would end up being a Commander, but it turns out it doesn't look like he wants to play football again. So let's get Jaden Daniels, a different former receiver of his, Kayshon Boutte, who is now presumably the 3 or 4 in New England. They've added A.J. Brown and Romeo Doubs now. I think he slots in as a real good number 2 behind McLaurin. Like I mentioned, he's already got a rapport with Daniels. They played together at LSU. Boutte had a great year last year with Drake May. He's good vertically. Daniels has a good deep ball. I think it's an absolute perfect fit. It might be boring, but I think that Kayshon Boutte, the Commanders, would really help their offense this year.
I'm a big fan of Kayshon Boutte going anywhere that doesn't relegate him to sort of an afterthought in Foxborough. So I'm going to give that an oh yeah. I am down with the idea of Kayshon Boutte. I actually had him pegged for my move as well, but to a different team. So now I'm going to have to pivot. But a good call there, Kenny. Bill, what say you?
I think that's a solid oh yeah. I think that's a move that would absolutely help the Commanders. I think the Commanders needed to be a little splashier and try and do a little more to help Jaden Daniels. But hey, they're where they're at this point, and that may be the best move they could make. Again, like Kenny said, if you can't get Brandon Ayuk in and get his head straight and get him wanting to play football, that might be the next best move for them.
All right, so we're effusively positive to this point. We've got to find something that doesn't make sense or something that doesn't work. Kind of like Tyler's microphone today. It's not working all that well, but he did throw out the idea in the chat of Stephon Diggs to the Rams. Bill, Stephon Diggs to the Rams, GTFO or oh yeah?
I'm going to give that a very strong oh yeah. And I know Stephon Diggs has his issues, but Sean McVay knows how to get to these guys and get these guys in line and play in the right way. And the Rams, look, and we talked about it with Nick Kostos earlier in the week. They go out and they go all in with Myles Garrett, but yet they still did the Ty Simpson move when they could have beefed up their wide receiver room and chose not to do it. This is a guy that you can get in. You don't need him to be your wide receiver 1. You're talking about having him like your wide receiver 3. What an absolute unit that could be for Matthew Stafford as this Rams team is going all in to try and win a Super Bowl. Beef up that wide receiver room. They don't need much else. I like this move. I like Tyler's thought. I give it a really strong oh yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Then stun somebody. Bill walks off, pounding 2 beers at the same time. Kenny, where are you on the Stephon Diggs to the Rams idea? GTFO or oh yeah?
This is where we get negative. GTFO. Does this team really need to add another former All-Pro? I know Stephon Diggs is not the same player, and he would be the 3rd receiver, and they are thin in the receiver room. But I actually have a better fit for Stephon Diggs. I think he should go to the Chiefs, who now are dealing with all this Rashee Rice stuff. He's a veteran. He can slot in there. I think that's a way better fit. The Rams don't need him. I think they're fine with Puka and Devontae as their 1 and 2.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a GTFO too. I don't think it's what the Rams need at this point. I'm not as down on their receiver room as a lot of people might be. I mean, you've still got Puka. I got to think he's going to be ready to roll by the time training camp comes around. Fully 110% good to go. Devontae Adams still there as well. Ageless wonder at this point. And I think low-key, one of the sneakier third-day picks, if you're looking for a guy to have an impact. I remember right after the draft, we talked about 6th-round gems, I think. And one of the guys I had on my list is C.J. Daniels. C.J. Daniels, I think, could have instant impact in that offense, a Sean McVay offense. Plus, they've got 37 tight ends on that roster. So I think there's plenty of targets to be divvied up already. The last thing I would need would be Stephon Diggs coming in and whining and complaining when he sees 3 targets in, a random game against the Cardinals early in the season. So I'm going to be out. I say GTFO with the idea of Stephon Diggs to the Rams. All right. Kenny kind of stole half of my idea, which was Booty to someplace. And my idea, homer as I may be, was why not for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who went out and got Michael Pittman during the offseason to add to DK Metcalf, who drafted Jeremy Bernard on the second day of the NFL draft. Why not add a field-stretching kind of guy? Mike McCarthy, in his classic Yinzer voice, likes to call those outside routes the Autobahn. We got some guys who can run out there on the Autobahn. Kayshon Boutte is a classic Autobahn kind of guy. And you get him on the outside. He gives Aaron Rodgers the opportunity to chuck one up every once in a while. Rodgers still has the arm strength to do that, even if he can't move as much anymore. So I was going to say Kayshon Boutte to Pittsburgh, but I will pivot since we already used Boutte. He already used Boutte. I will say Deebo Samuel on a flyer, a training camp deal to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah, I'll still stay a homer. Deebo Samuel to the Steelers. Somebody who McCarthy can use in a variety of different ways, but on a pretty limited basis, because talk about guys and how much gas they may have left in the tank, how healthy they may be able to stay. Deebo would be near the top of that list. But Deebo to the Steelers, the ability to run some things out of the slot, get a little creative inside a Mike McCarthy offense. Bill, Deebo to the Steelers right before training camp. GTFO or oh yeah?
Chris, I'm going to give you a GTFO on that one. I liked where you were headed. I thought you might be going a different direction. Then you zigged there for Deebo. I don't know. You bring Deebo to Pittsburgh, he's going to be living at Primanti Brothers. I'm not sure what's going to go on with Deebo there. I don't know how much is left in the tank, except that he's building a tank. So I'm going to say GTFO on Deebo Samuel.
Deebo Samuel, I mean, Primanti Brothers sandwiches have been known to have a restorative power, Bill, so I can't believe you would see that as a bad thing. Kenny, GTFO or oh yeah on Deebo to the Steelers?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chris. I'm going to have to give you a GTFO as well. Also, because it's a Steelers thing, why would you want Deebo on your team? I think you guys are good with Metcalf and Pittman. I mean, I don't even know what Deebo is at this point. He was a good gadget guy with Shanahan, and it seems like he's not even fast anymore. So, like, what is his worth? I just not that I don't really. I guess he could slot in, but what is he really going to give you, kind of thing? So, GTFO. I'm not really high on Deebo Samuel coming into this year.
That's fine. That's all right. You guys can talk all the mess you want on Primanti Brothers sandwiches and on Deebo or anyone else. Being a little too close to the situation maybe has affected me in looking at the Steelers receiver room because, yeah, Metcalf and Pittman, Bernard, I like those three. And as Tyler has mentioned in the chat, despite his broken microphone, might be a good mentor for Jeremy Bernard, Deebo Samuel. Could be. Plus, I just like Kenny mentioned the gadget stuff. I think that could work. But I'll accept your GTFOs, and I will slink off into the shadows, losing this round of GTFO or oh yeah, NFL Summer Break Edition here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. This is going to be fascinating to me, these leftovers, as I called them. With training camp, as OTAs and mini camps come to an end over the next couple of weeks, you're going to have a lot of coaches reassessing what they have. Which young guys have picked up the program quickly enough? Which free agents that we've brought in? Yeah, it's football in shorts. It's a lot of non-contact stuff, routes on air, not a lot of team periods at practice. That's what mini camps and OTAs are. But they're still going to look at some of these guys and say, okay, do we have a better handle on this position group or that position group? Receiver rooms that are thin around the league. Are they going to look at the Stephon Diggs and Deebo Samuels of the world and say, okay, we're willing to roll the dice on that one? Or do they call up the Patriots about Kayshon Boutte? All valuable question. If you're the Ravens or another team looking for maybe some interior offensive line help, do you pick up one of those guys off the scrap heap that may still be out there? That's the kind of stuff that you're going to see, say, 4 or 5 weeks from now when teams are getting ready to report to training camp and they're looking to flesh out their roster with some of those veteran leftovers who are still out there. Game 2 tonight in San Antonio. Can Wemby get, I don't know, aggressive? Be aggressive. Be aggressive. Can he flip the switch and become the bully he needs to be if the Spurs want to bounce back tonight in Game 2? We'll ask our Odyssey NBA insider. It's a Friedel Friday. Nick Friedel next here on Westwood One Sports.
12 consecutive wins for the Knicks as they take game 1 of the NBA Finals. Their 7th consecutive road game. And one of the great playoff runs in NBA history is still alive.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
To none on the Spurs. Can they go up 2-0? Do we get another Jalen Brunson moment? Do we get another Karl Anthony Towns game? Or does Victor Wembanyama actually have some sort of bully in him, some sort of aggression? Can he find some anger? All that time with monks and meditation, can he find that going into game 2 against the Knicks in San Antonio? It is Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet, getting you ready for game 2 and everything going on in the world of sports. Who better to talk to on a Friedel Friday ahead of game 2 of the NBA Finals than our good friend Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel. Insider Calls brought to you by Hyundai and the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. Good morning, Nick. How are you? And do you think there's any sort of anger inside that stoic Victor Wembanyama brain?
There better be, Mr. Mack. Because if not, I'm a little concerned that this thing is going to get out of hand in a hurry for San Antonio having to go back to the Garden after game 2. So this is a big time momentum game. I think Wembanyama has it in him to right the ship, get everybody focused. What I'm most curious about, on top of is there a little extra juice in there for him tonight, is he okay? Because he looked gassed in game 1. Everybody has been talking about it the last couple days, but even in the first quarter, you're looking at him going, I don't know. That is my single biggest question in game 2 is the fire going to be there the way he needs, but did he get enough of a break mentally and physically after closing out the Thunder where you look at him and you go, he can play more up to the level we've seen throughout the last year?
Yeah, it was one of those things we talked about, just the disparity in rest that these two teams would have coming into the NBA Finals. And the Knicks certainly didn't play their best game in game 1, but end up stealing it, if you want to call it that. It's more about just they show up in the fourth quarter, especially. Jalen Brunson shows up in the fourth quarter, especially. And they looked like they were excited for the moment. The Spurs looked like, again, maybe to your point, it was the lack of rest between series. They didn't look intimidated by the moment. That's not the right word. They had the lead going into the final, 6 minutes of this game, but they looked tentative almost at times, especially Wemby, stopping to shoot an 18-foot jumper rather than going to the hole, rather than attacking. And that's, I think, to your point, what we have to see from Wembanyama, not just tonight, but going forward in this series for the Spurs to have a chance to even it up and maybe go on to win it, is he's got to find those last few reserves of anger, if he's got them in there, and aggression, and start attacking.
Chris, the supporting cast of the Spurs is really, really good, and they're going to be a lot better over the next few years because so much of the core of that group is very young. They're all going through it for the first time. But unless they get Wemby playing like the superstar that he has shown to be, it ain't going to happen for him. He is the engine. Champagny and Vassell and Harper, all these guys, they are nice players, and they are enjoying the moment of becoming even greater in real time, but they aren't that guy. And if the Spurs want to be who they want to be as champs, Wemby has to find a different place. And I think when I watch him, it's the biggest concern I have right now, because you just wonder, did they give everything they had to get through OKC, and what do they have left against this veteran-laden Knicks team that has this basketball killer who appears at the end of the fourth quarters every time, and Jalen Brunson that everybody else is rallying around? So I don't think I'm ready to count out the Spurs by any stretch. But as I watched game one, I sat there and went, oh, boy, if you don't have Wemby playing at the level he did throughout most of that OKC series, and they just run body after body after him every night, the Knicks are going to give him some real problems.
Let's go down a path where the Spurs, whether it involves Wemby flipping a switch or not, the Spurs find a way to win game two. They're 6.5-point favorites, which is wild. I think twice since January, the Knicks have been this big a dog, and one of those games was against OKC on the road. The other one was the season finale against Charlotte when nobody was in the lineup. So this is a pretty big number, I think, for game two of the NBA Finals. But let's say the Spurs find a way to win it. Let's say the books know what they're doing, and this series is even up, headed back to the Garden. How do you think the Knicks will handle finally losing for the first time in like a month and a half? You mentioned it, veteran-laden team. I don't think it would knock them off their axis too much, but I do question how, when everything is going your way, the way it has for the last month and a half for the Knicks, how you react to maybe losing a game. And maybe it's not even a game where the Spurs outplay them. Maybe it flips the script and it's just the Spurs coming up with the big shots late.
Chris, they're going to have to take a collective deep breath. But as we sit here right now, if they were to lose game two, I wouldn't be concerned. And I wouldn't be concerned because of Brunson. I just think that guy is wired so differently that he's not going to let them fall into some kind of emotional hole because they finally lost, because he figures, all right, we'll just get him in game three. And that's why it's just so clear as we watch what's unfolded in the last 48 hours. The pressure has absolutely got to be on San Antonio, because if you go down 0-2 into the Garden, I've been in New York City the last week. The energy in this place is palpable. You have people waiting in line, just for an example, Chris, so they're waiting in front of a subway stop that is painted orange and blue in droves because they're so excited about what's going on a block away at the Garden, and the games aren't even going on there. I mean, people are losing their minds in this city. So if you have a young San Antonio team that walks into game three in that kind of hole, I think the Knicks will be just fine if they end up losing. The question I have moving forward into tonight and beyond is, I'm not worried about Brunson. Can Karl Anthony Towns play the same way he did in game one? Because he was awesome. He's been very good in the postseason. What happens if you do face some kind of downward spiral a little bit and the momentum that you've had for like a month disappears? Are those guys, the Anunobys and the Bridges, are they going to be okay playing off that? Only time will tell, but I don't think it's a gigantic concern because they follow their leader, and their leader is Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, I think that feeds right back into what we were saying about Wemby and wanting to see him attack. If he can attack, if he can get Towns in foul trouble, if that means more Mitchell Robinson, if that means getting him in foul trouble and really putting Mike Brown in a spot where he's got to reconfigure the lineup on the fly just a little bit, that would go a long way towards the Spurs finding some sort of momentum in this game. Let me pivot back, though, to what you were talking about, being in New York for the last week or so. I am convinced that he's got to get the ring to cement his place amongst the all-time great clutch players. Like, we had this debate earlier on the show. You know, there are great clutch players who've been out there. You know, you think of Dame Lillard during his time in Portland, would seemingly sink a 35-footer out of nowhere and they'd win a game. But he doesn't have the ring, right? I'm not making an apples-to-apples comparison from, say, prime Dame Lillard to Jalen Brunson, but, you know, they remain in the same conversation as clutch guys until Brunson wins the ring. I also think there is a certain sense of, amongst fans who aren't in New York or LA, where they hesitate just a little bit to embrace a guy as an all-time legendary great or even as good as he is, because they know they're already going to get their props and their love from their home markets, and it's going to disperse out across the country. So there are people that are waiting to sort of crown Jalen Brunson as one of these all-time great clutch players because he's in New York. That's why we're hearing about him so much. He's in New York. But I really do think that Brunson is just 3 wins away from going right up there with, it sounds like hyperbole, but I don't think it is, Kobe, Jordan, mid to late 80s Bird. I never saw Jerry West play, but your all-time great clutch players.
Chris, if Brunson finishes this off, not only does he secure his own legacy as one of the greatest clutch players we've seen, as you mentioned, as we've seen this season unfold in his development over the last few years, what he also is going to do, and this goes exactly to your point, he's going to make it easier for all those little guards coming behind him. All the questions of, oh, well, can a small guard be the number one on a team? They're going to be very, very gone because people are going to say, you see what he just did? Mm-hmm. It's always within you if you can make it happen. So I think he relishes being that guy. I know he doesn't really say much at all, frankly, in public. He's a really interesting guy who doesn't offer anything interesting from a media standpoint. Maybe he'll open up a little more if they do finish off this series and win these last 3. But I think it speaks to what you are saying. If Jalen Brunson is the guard who leads the New York Knicks to a championship, not only is he going to get his jersey retired and the legacy will be cemented, but he'll be the guy that casual fans all across the country want to come see. And that puts him in that category, maybe not to the level of the Jordans or the Kobes, but he's in the conversation of a guy who changed the entire tenor for the organization, and in this case, as a small guard for the league. So he can shift a lot of narratives over the next couple weeks if he closes out this series.
Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA Insider, with us here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Insider Calls brought to you by Hyundai and by the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. Learn how it makes every day epic at HyundaiUSA.com. You talk about small guards, Nick. We've also talked a lot over the last 2 rounds of these playoffs about big men, whether it was Wemby abusing Chet, whether it's, it's been a conversation in every round, really, throughout these playoffs. Do you have a big man? Do you have a guy that can match up with Chet or Wemby in the West? Karl Anthony Towns, as you mentioned earlier, is a big part of the conversation for the Knicks. I know this is a guard-heavy draft, especially early in the first round, but do you get the sense that maybe we're pivoting back towards a system in the NBA that values the big man a whole lot more than it has been in, say, the last 10 to 15 years?
Yes. I mean, Chris, all this stuff is cyclical. There's been such a run on, can you score? Can you push the pace? Can you get the tempo going? It's a copycat league, and it always has been. If you have big men that are able to change the course of the game, or in the case of what we've seen sometimes in the postseason, change the tenor of the playoffs in a series, everything comes back around. So while I don't think that the game's going to slow down and you're going to go back to early 90s where you're throwing the ball into Shaq and Ewing and say, give it to me, and everything slows. If you have big men that know what they're doing and can stretch the floor in a lot of different places, or if you have a dominant big man who can defensively change what's happening out there, it is going to shift and the game will adapt that way. But I think absolutely to what we're talking about, it's been so guard heavy for at least the last 5-10 years. If you can get big men who can alter the course of what's happening, all of a sudden you're going to see more big men popping up and you're going to see teams looking for those guys. And that has not been the case recently in the way the drafts have come together in what teams are valuing. I think that part of the conversation is going to change a little bit.
All right. With that said, I told you last week I was going to ask you about this week. So, Giannis, Do you get the sense that this is done before the draft so that the Bucks can get some picks? Do you get the sense that maybe nothing ends up happening at all and he ends up staying in Milwaukee? What's your vibe on where things go for Giannis Antetokounmpo this summer?
I would be surprised if he starts next year with the Bucks. I think there is so much smoke around. Is he going to move? Where is he going to go? What's going to happen? Chris, when that happens, it rare is it where you turn around and a team changes course and they stay and happily ever after everything's good. The example I would use that comes to mind is like 10 or 15 years ago, Dwight Howard's leaving Orlando. He's leaving Orlando. He's out of there. And then he stayed for a year. But the entire year, it was like, oh, God, is he going to leave? What's going to happen? I think it's better for everybody involved, Giannis, the Bucks, wherever he lands, to just tear the Band-Aid off. So whether it happens before the draft, whether it happens at some point in the summer, we'll see. I would lean right now to maybe before the draft just because it sets up all the different picks and what can happen. But I'd be surprised if he stays there long term. And that is a shift because all Giannis has ever said publicly over and over and over again is, I want to be with one team. I want to be in Milwaukee the whole time, like a Kobe, like a Jerry West, like those guys that have done it, and Dirk. And now it doesn't sound like he wants to do it. Where he ultimately lands, that is a really, really big question for the rest of the league. But Chris, as we look ahead, I'd be really concerned inking him to that next deal. He's an incredible player when he's healthy. He can still be a huge difference maker. I just don't believe he's going to be able to stay healthy year after year after year. So it will be the story of the summer. I ultimately think he does get moved, but I am really hesitant about that next deal because of what we've seen in these last few years with the injuries.
I'm going to throw it out there just because there's been smoke around Cleveland as a possibility. Is there any way, and it would be a massive 1 year swing for the Cavs, and then they'd be saddled with the rest of Antetokounmpo's deal, whatever it ends up looking like. But Giannis, we've heard about LeBron maybe doing one more year in Cleveland. You're already tied up into Harden, however that works out, and probably not going to be able to get out from underneath it. Maybe Mitchell as well. Could the Cavs take one giant wild swing at trying to put together a, forget super team, mega team?
They could, but I don't believe it works. That's that. If you're Dan Gilbert and you're at this stretch of, are we still kind of in it, or do we really have a chance? I wouldn't put it past them, Chris. I just don't believe if you, let's say they land Giannis, in order to give up what it would take to get him, I don't think it puts you that much closer to where they're at. On top of the fact that if everybody's being real about the situation, there is such a huge gap as we sit here right now between, at least in the West, OKC and San Antonio. And we've spent so much time talking about the Knicks. They may well be the NBA champs. They're just a cut above everyone else right now. I don't believe that the Cavs are that close. They can go try and get Giannis, but in order to make that deal, I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for them for the long term.
Appreciate the time as always, Nick. One of the best parts of our Fridays having you on. Look forward to Game 2 tonight and where the series goes from here. Enjoy New York, my friend.
Always, my friend. I will talk to you next week.
You got it. Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA Insider. Insider Calls brought to you by Hyundai and by the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. Learn how it makes every day epic at HyundaiUSA.com. Now that I think about it, there's no way they could even make the cap situation work with all those big names in Cleveland. I don't think they could, knowing that LeBron still wants to get paid and doesn't want to take anything less than he feels like he's valued at. But, I had to do it for the friends in Cleveland. Throw out a little hope that, is that even hopeful? Would you want that in Cleveland? I think the first step in Cleveland has to be getting out from underneath Harden if you can somehow do it. Speaking of Game 2 tonight between the Spurs and the Knicks, I got to get you a bet on that one. And it's a very simple, straightforward bet. Plus, our 3 favorite moments of the day, our 3 stars coming up next to wrap up You Better You Bet right here on Westwood One Sports.
Yeah, Dan, I'm sorry. If you get 82-0 with re-spinning, it doesn't count. It only doesn't count because I didn't know it existed for a whole day. And I can't get 82-0 even with it.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Phenomenal Friday here on Westwood One Sports. Ready to kick off the weekend. We are with you all weekend long inside that Westwood One Sports app and the Odyssey app, AUDACY, live across North America 24/7 on Sirius XM channel 375 as well. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Speaking of which, get inside the BetMGM app for tonight's Game 2 of the NBA Finals. You'll receive an NBA Final Odds Boost token. To use that token, add a wager made up of NBA Final bets to your bet slip and activate the token. You win your wager, you receive extra winnings in unrestricted bonus dollars. And I told you, the Knicks haven't lost a game in which Jalen Brunson played by more than a single point since March. They've been this big a dog. They are 6.5-point underdogs tonight in San Antonio, just twice since January. One was a road game at OKC when they were 8-point dogs. One was the season finale against the Charlotte Hornets when the Knicks didn't play anybody. They're 6.5-point dogs. And look, it's entirely possible that Wemby could actually play with some aggression tonight, or maybe Greg Popovich pulled the Spurs aside for another one of his marathon film sessions to try and fix everything. But even if those things come together and happen and the Spurs win Game 2, are you willing to bet on the Knicks' postseason winning streak ending without them at least having a shot at some late game heroics? I'm not. So I'm on the Knicks plus 6.5 tonight. Maybe use that NBA Final Odds Boost token inside the BetMGM app as well. Every day we like to wrap up the show with 3 of our favorite moments from the show. And thanks to Courtney Cronin, Eddie Olczyk, and Nick Friedel, we have got some of those for you. They are our 3 stars of the day.
3.
I think the ceiling for this team should be the divisional playoffs again. It's really hard to say that any team's not going to beat the Los Angeles Rams because it feels like they're forming a mega team out there with like everything that they have offensively and defensively. The Bears are a team right now that still have holes on the roster. I think, though, they're still one of the more talented teams in their own conference, let alone in their own division.
Courtney Cronin of ESPN joined us earlier talking about everything in the NFC North, including the Bears. Hopefully the Madden curse, for their sake, does not strike Caleb Williams. Yes, they've got issues up front on the defense. They could use some reinforcements in the front 7, especially right up front on the defensive line. But I think we're all looking at the wrong team to backslide in the NFC North. Courtney mentioned this as well. You can always rewind inside your Odyssey app if you want to go back and listen to the conversation, or just download the podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, search You Better You Bet. I think the Packers, particularly with the Josh Jacobs issues, we don't know if that's going to lead to him serving some sort of suspension later this year. Micah Parsons, we now know, out until October. I think the Packers might be the team to eye up for an NFC North backslide. I still like the Vikings as a dark horse. KOC working with Kyler Murray. Justin Jefferson getting footballs thrown somewhere in his vicinity. Could we go Lions, Bears, Vikings, Packers in the NFC North with at least 2 of them making the playoffs? I think that's a distinct possibility. Our number 2 star of the day.
2.
I'm going to answer it this way. I saw what Vegas saw. That's what I saw on the replays that I was watching and again, doing the color on radio. I didn't mind the challenge at all. I did not.
Eddie Olczyk joined us in between flights on his way out to Vegas for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final after calling Game 2 last night on Sirius XM NHL Radio. Talking about the challenge by John Tortorella and the Vegas Golden Knights on a late goaltender interference call that they did not win, had to go on the penalty kill, and what happens? Carolina scores. Carolina power play had not been effective really at all up to that point, but it was in that moment. And look, there's not a singular moment that I think you can pin last night's Game 2 on, but it's been a hell of a series so far. Both teams blowing multi-goal leads. Both teams coming back on multi-goal deficits at some point. If you thought this was going to be a boring Stanley Cup Final, I hate to break the news to you. It's been phenomenal so far. And Game 3 tomorrow night in Vegas. Edzo will be on the call alongside John Forsland, as I mentioned, on the radio side. Our number 1 star of the day.
1.
I think Wemby has it in him to right the ship, get everybody focused. What I'm most curious about, on top of, is there a little extra juice in there for him tonight, is he okay? Because he looked gassed in Game 1.
Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA insider, joined us just a few moments ago. Like I said, if you missed it, that's what the podcasts are for. That's what the rewind feature is for. But that take on Wemby doesn't sound wrong to me. He looked like a guy who just got done battling through OKC. And, I mean, I remember talking about it in the immediate aftermath of the win over the Thunder. That emotional release that you saw Victor Wembanyama have, tears in his eyes. That team celebrated the win over OKC, San Antonio did, almost like they had won the finals. And I don't know, for a young team like that, how hard it could be to refocus, reset, and get ready for a veteran team that's shown they can handle a long layoff and has been playing the best basketball of anyone all year for a stretch of like a month and a half now in the Knicks. So that's the big question going into Game 2. Can Wemby and the Spurs find some sort of emotional reserves to tap into? Yeah, a good old-fashioned Greg Popovich film session will go a long way towards fixing the schematics of what may have gone wrong. But the Spurs didn't play a terrible game until the last 5 or 6 minutes or so. So is there that much to fix other than just telling Victor Wembanyama, Wemby, attack the hole? If that gets fixed, if he can find it within himself to do that, I think the Spurs can win Game 2, even up the series before it heads back to the Garden next week, and we may get the legendary 6 or 7 game battle we thought we were in for. If not, this thing could end at the Garden next week. Man, you think New Yorkers are crazy and intolerable now. Just wait. Thanks to Dan Turner on the video production. Thanks to Kenny Henderson for holding down the board. Tyler Morales as well. Thanks to Bill Zimmerman, our executive producer. And thanks to each and every one of you for hanging out today. Bleck and Abdallah up next right here on Westwood One Sports.